Hello, everyone. I am the behavior support specialist for Open Choice. I'm a behavior analyst and I help support districts from pre-K all the way through high school. And I work with students of all abilities and support them in academics and behavior and support teams. I'm really lucky because I get to work with everybody that needs me. So I'm not stuck in a particular grade level. Um, the presentation that I've put together today, let me check, I can share this and present. What I've put together today is what we hope to be the first in a series of teaching parents how to best support their children, advocate for their children, just about the educational system, different supports that schools put in place. Today, we're going to be focusing on one called SRBI, and we hope to also provide other presentations in the future on 504 and IEPs. But today, this is the first kind of look at what parents can do to help support their children get back on track. And there we go. Okay, one second. I'm new to Google Slides, so. Okay. The first part, and some of this is tailored certainly to younger grades, but it can all be adapted and applied to older high school students, middle school students, and that. But the first kind of step in supporting your child, and they may be struggling, these can be tailored. It's not focused on students who are just struggling academically or students who are just struggling behaviorally. It's kind of in general what a parent can do to sort of support the teacher and the student in getting back on track. So one of the things to take into consideration is that as parents, we know our children really well. And we know, obviously, what they're like at home, what they're like with their friends and family. The piece that we don't necessarily get to know about our children very well is who they are in a classroom. So because that is such a different environment, they develop essentially repertoires or personalities, and that's who they are socially, who they are academically, who they are as a learner. And so while as parents we know a lot about our children, that is one piece that we really have to enter into a partnership with our children's educators to make sure that we're all on the same page supporting. Things to kind of learn about your child might be who they are as a learner in a whole group setting. So are they the student that waits to be called on? Are they the one that calls out with the answer and takes a risk? Are they risk takers? How's their attention level? Do they attend really well when they're working one-on-one with a teacher, but not so much in whole group? What does their skill acquisition look like in these different settings? It's important information, particularly when you're communicating with a teacher, to get an idea of who your child is there. How are they as a classmate? What are their social interactions like? Are they outgoing? Are they introverted? What are they like at recess? What are they like on the rug or in class during direct instruction? And so these are sort of things, and this can change every year. Depending on, depending on the teacher. And so kind of as you get to know your child as a learner, you also need to know them as a learner in the classroom environment. And so each teacher is different. Each classroom is structured differently. This is often based upon the level of experience the teacher has, their own personality and interaction styles, what professional development they've had. And so this can result in sort of, sometimes you might hear, that your child had a really great year with one teacher, and then now it's the fall and you're hearing about all these struggles that, and concerns that the teacher has, and it might seem new or a surprise to you. And that's where sometimes getting to know your child as a learner, particularly as they go through different teachers, you'll get to know more about that. But bringing that information in when you're talking with teachers can really help give you a good understanding of the teacher's perspective, but also how to best support your child. You can ask several different types of questions, and so that kind of help probe and pull out some of that information. Some things to ask about is the classroom schedule and structure. So we're often as parents given, the school schedule or the classroom schedule, but it might not outline what that structure looks like, and what does that hour and a half reading block really look like for your child. And so what you would take a look at and kind of weed out what the day might bring for your student is how many opportunities for unstructured time each day is there. Is there free time, is there breaks, snacks, lunch, recess? For older students, what time is lunch scheduled? Are there study halls? Are there opportunities for sort of just that unstructured ability for them to not have to attend and be on all day, particularly with longer academic blocks? Take a look at, how long are the work sessions? What modes of instruction are used within those? And this you might need to ask specifically from a teacher. What is the mixture of whole group instruction, small group instruction? How much time does your child get with one-on-one time with a teacher? How much independent work are they expected during that block? For instance, if a child is struggling in reading, how is that instruction delivered? And then ask specific questions. Well, how do they do when the mini lesson is being delivered? How are they one-on-one? Are they more attentive there? But start to see if you can't help the teacher and you tease out what might be ultimately kind of being the biggest barrier for your child, and really focus on when do they do really well. Sometimes and if it's a behavior concern, when doesn't the behavior happen? Sometimes we focus a lot on when things are occurring or not occurring, but you really want to take a look at the balance of both. When does something occur, when doesn't occur? And then that can give you a little bit more information. Ask about the classroom and school-wide reinforcement or behavior management strategies in high school, middle school. What are the school's discipline policies? How are teachers, directed to intervene with challenging behavior or task refusal, not doing work? Questions that you would ask are, how are appropriate behaviors and expectations taught to students? Often at the beginning of the year, particularly in the younger grades, we do a lot of teaching about the rules, and you come up with class contracts. And even in the older grades, each teacher goes through and talks about the expectations of their class. But you really want to make sure that that you hear that these things are being taught to some level. Sometimes, we expect that kids just know certain rules and expectations, particularly during transitions and things like that. It's easy to assume that they know how to transition from the rug to their desk. Sometimes they may not. And if it's not explicitly taught, then some might get lost there. You might want to ask what classroom rewards or incentives are used to teach appropriate behavior. Different classrooms, some do pom-poms, some do points. You really want to know, how is your child taught and reinforced for the things that they're supposed to do? And so even at the high school level, they might not have, the cutesy little tokens and things like that, but there should be some way for students to know that they're doing what you want them to do, that they're doing a good job. And so kind of find out about that. If you're not hearing those things, asking those probing questions might lead to a conversation about maybe your child needs just a little bit of a boost. And then also you want to know, how are students redirected from challenging behavior if they're not attending, if they're not following the rules? What does that look like? And be very specific in kind of what you're looking for. What does the teacher say? What do they do? Do they use proximity? Do they walk over to the student? Um, is it something that they say in front of the whole class? And just kind of what does it look like? You really want to go on a fact finding mission, I guess, to find out maybe what specifically your child is struggling with. And you also want to find out, how are students taught who they can go to when there's a disagreement or inappropriate conduct from another student. What does it look like? Does your child know, if I have some sort of confrontation with another student, can I name 2 adults in the school that I can go to help me with that? And they don't often know. I'm surprised how, even with my own son, for instance, I know that there's a paraeducator in the room, and I'll say, "Oh, what's her name?" And he doesn't remember, so it's not that that person isn't in there all the time, but sometimes we don't directly teach to kids who their supports are and what they can do. And so those kind of questions are things that you can ask it's sort of at the beginning as you're developing a relationship with the teacher, and particularly if they bring up concerns to you. This can help guide you sort of in where that conversation could go. Let's see. So there's also, kind of, as parents, we can ask the questions, but what can you do to be proactive? And so you can always ask for a meeting with your child's teacher. You don't need to wait for a parent teacher conference. They're usually scheduled, about twice a year, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask to meet with a teacher, have a conversation outside of those. And the teacher doesn't have to come to you to say that there's a problem in order to have that meeting. If you're feeling like your child is saying that things aren't going great at school, or you're noticing that they struggle with homework, it's okay to reach out and ask for a meeting with the teacher. Most are going to really, if not all, are going to welcome that, and to help foster a really good parent-teacher relationship. When you have that meeting, some things that you could ask about, you can ask, okay, what specific examples and supporting documentation do you have, for those, or have they done assessments, and, even in informal assessments, can they show you completed work, or incompleted work for some kids? Do they have, what level of understanding do they have about the specific challenges for your student? It's one thing for a teacher to say, well, they're not doing, their math worksheets at this level. And it's another for them to say, well, I did run through this assessment, and they didn't hit these benchmarks. And so I did further work with them, and they still weren't able to. But you should find out what specifically, if it's a behavior concern, have they taken any data on it? Can you at least get, what times of day, how long, does anything seem to trigger something? And sort of find out what other information you can have just besides a teacher saying that there's a concern. Ask about what strategies and supports have been tried. Have they tried one-to-one instruction with your child? Is there additional adult support that they've tried during challenging activities? Oftentimes in the younger grades, they have extra adults floating around as classroom supports, just because there's lots of little bodies and one teacher. In the older grades, the same thing, has a teacher reached out for extra tutoring? What have they done to sort of go a little bit beyond the typical instruction that they're providing? And what else have they tried? You can always ask what you can do at home to support the learning of tricky concepts. Obviously, as our kids start to get into math and things that we don't remember because it's been a really long time, that gets a little bit harder, but that doesn't mean that you can't find other supports for your student to get that extra tutoring at home. And then the next question always is, so let's say that the teacher has provided you examples, they've shown completed work, it looks like they've tried lots of different things. That still then leaves everybody wondering what further supports are available at the school for struggling students. And this might be formal math and reading interventions, it could be a tutoring program, but really what else? Most schools have some level of intervention for kids that aren't getting what they need in the natural kind of instructional environment. And so just know there always is more that can be done. One of the reasons that this is there's been several education acts, and there's something out there called response to intervention. And so the kind of a little bit of the law behind this is there is federal guidance that asks schools to do this level of support and see how a student responds to intervention. So what that would do is tailor different interventions to a student's individual needs, but then also in some cases, those interventions can be used to inform the diagnosis of perhaps a learning disability. But there is that level, and these programs are typically implemented by schools having something called a student assistant team. It might be called something different in different districts, but this is one common name that I've heard. What this is it's a team that is gathered to brings grade level teachers in, service providers, interventionists, and they talk about what else can a teacher do. And it's kind of like a think tank, and is, what else can a teacher do? What maybe, a math interventionist can take the student for a while, and they can get formal intervention outside of the classroom, whether or not it's a pullout, meaning they go to a small group or a one-to-one setting outside of the classroom, or if the interventionist comes into the classroom. But there is this process out there that kind of can take what you and the teacher have tried on your own to come up with to support. And if that doesn't, this would be the next level of support. And so I believe they're often called student assistant teams. During this, they do something called SRBI. So what that means is scientific research-based interventions. And so this is one of the additional supports that the team may recommend. These interventions should be tailored to the student's needs, take a look at their weaknesses and their strengths. Schools may use certain programs for these. They may say, well, this, math intervention is run by this program. If that program doesn't seem to be working for your child, it's okay to ask if there's other interventions that could be tried to see if maybe your child just isn't learning through the mode that program is requiring them. But it should kind of be a trial and error of sorts. You want to see sort of trying a few different things before saying that SRBI isn't enough to support your child. They should take data on the progress. You should get progress reports. It should be regularly, but you should also be able to ask at any time and just say, okay, I'd like to see their progress in that math intervention or that reading intervention. And like I had said before, they can be used to establish a learning disability diagnosis in some cases if the student isn't responding to that intervention in a way that they would expect, given the level of support being provided. And then we have strategies to use at home. So there's lots of specific strategies that you could do. But some general ones, for instance, for academics, especially at the early academic level, you really want to make sure that you read to your child and have them read to you. So this is a very common theme in early ed. It's, that early literacy is really important. From a behavior standpoint, why that is so important is when your child is little and, you're in that stage of parenting where there's lots of cuddles and time on lap, and that's a very positive time for bonding for your child. And it's typically very reinforcing for a child to be that close with their parent. When you take academics into the mix and you're doing reading or you're doing puzzles or you're doing math, that starts to kind of pair that academics with that same kind of like loving feeling that your child gets with you. And so that sort of sets the basis for children liking school. And so that's one of the reasons behind reading to your child. Make time each day to look at schoolwork and talk about school. Make your it known to your child that you care about their academic progress, that you want to see what their work it looks like, and have them show you what was hard, and celebrate their progress with something that was hard and they overcome. But make sure that school, as parents, it's easy. They get off the bus and we're into making dinner, and then you're into the bedtime routine and different work schedules, and it can be really hard to take that time to carve out and just talk about school, talk about their friends, talk about what that looks like. Use math language with your child as they're older. If you use math on a daily basis, like show them how that starts to apply to their life as adults. Sometimes kids get a disconnect because math is something that they do in the classroom. It may not be something, they may not see that it's something that you use to pay the bills and calculate with money. And so just make that sort of part of your interactions with your kids so that they can see that the hard work they're putting in now does start to apply to them as adults. And like I said, show an interest in their work, and always let them know that you're proud. Even if their progress is small, even if it seems like they're not trying, just let them know that you are proud for what they're doing. I mean, school's a big part of their life. For behavior, things that you can do, always keep consistent expectations about your child's behavior at school. So let your child know that you do have this level of expectation that they're going to follow the rules. And that goes for any age level. One thing that I do jump to is, but not necessarily, it doesn't mean discipline them at home for behavior that happened at school. I would always, if there's been incidents with my children in the past, I ask the school, the teacher, is this something that you're handling at school, or is it something that you would like me to address at home? Oftentimes they're going to say that they just want to let you know. And I think as parents, we hear that our child is struggling and we want to fix it and we want to find the answer. Sometimes it's just, just know it happened and that you're monitoring it. And it doesn't mean don't talk to your child about it, get their perspective, but don't necessarily tie that with discipline if things weren't going well. And then let your child know that you communicate with the teacher, and that so you'll know what goes on at school, but that also that both the teacher and you want your child to succeed. Even if you have some concerns about a teacher or the interactions haven't been positive, try as best you can to keep that from your child, just because you don't want to add to anything that's kind of playing into the struggle at school. And sometimes they can take on what their parents feel, and kind of bring that with them. And so as best you can, let them know that you communicate with the teacher, and that you both want him to or her to succeed. And then kind of my last little bit of advice here is to have that consistent communication with your teacher. They really are your partner in this. And as a parent, we get a new teacher every year, and then they hit middle school and high school, and it multiplies. But try your best to keep that line of communication open. When we get into a pattern of only communicating with the school when something goes wrong or isn't working, that sets up a dynamic that kind of makes everybody sort of want to avoid communication with one another. And so really you want to try and find positive things, and teachers should also be doing this as well. But you really want to make sure that you're comfortable reaching out to the teacher, the principal, anyone at the school, to have valuable discussions about your child's success. And then the last point here that kind of hints at future kind of talks is sometimes SRBI isn't enough. You know, it can be implemented really well and everybody could have given it their best shot, but there just may need to be more for your child in order for them to succeed and access their education. What this often ends up in two different processes depending on a child's disability. Is one is section 504, and so that provides accommodations for students with a disability, and so that makes makes it able for the school to provide different things that your child may need. Sometimes they get extra time on tests, sometimes they get some extra interventions, different, you know, lessons may, how it's delivered to them may look different. But that's section 504. The other route is special education, and that is the development of an IEP. That's a legal process that secures services and supports for a struggling student, and that's certainly a very important step for some kids, and one that we'll definitely set up another presentation for. That is what I have for you all right now. If you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanisa. Great. You can keep the presentation going since we are still recording, Tanisa. And I'm gonna let anyone who's here who have any questions, if you don't, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can put them in the chat room, and here our team will read those questions off for Tanisa. So any questions that you may have for Tanisa towards the presentation today? No questions? Thank
If
you.
there,
Go ahead,
if
Tanisa.
there, yeah, if there are no specific questions, I just want you to know that I am here as a support to you. If there are some specific individual things that you want to talk about, you know, privately, you can reach out at any time, and I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tanisa, again for some great information. I know there's a lot to take in, and that's probably why you're still probably don't have the questions. But I wanna encourage my the team to just send their contact information. Tanisa will do the same through the chat. We are here to support you in anything in any way possible with home in school district. So if you have any questions after today and this evening and you thought about it, please feel free to send us an email, and we will definitely follow up with you this evening. If our director is here, Christina, any last words for families who are still joining us this evening?
Hi, thank you. Yes. I think what I would like to say is for the districts and for the families, we are a Hartford-based CREC open choice team. And so there are a lot of resources that are available to you. We want to make sure that you know that we are available to you and that we can be called or emailed to attend PPTs or 504s or SAT meetings at the request of the family or the district. We are, you know, multilingual. We have the ability on our team to both speak and write in Spanish and English. And we have a vast level of experience, not only in Hartford, but other large urban cities. So there's a lot of expertise here. And it may seem like, well, we're out on COVID, and so therefore we may not need the correct team to be involved, but please do be in touch with us because we are offering so much programming, wonderful events for families to take part of, as well as districts. So remember that we're here, and you just give us a shout, and we'll come running. Thanks for being with us tonight, and have a really wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Tanisa, for such a great presentation. And we look forward. I do want to remind our families in our districts who are here that we do have a following Hot Topic Cafe coming up in February 11. So please save that date, February 11. That's a Thursday evening at 6:30. We will be sending more information coming up soon of our next topic. Again, have a great evening and tonight. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.